Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Deanna and I make videos on mental health and self-improvement. And in today's video I'm going to be discussing more about myself and about do I really have BPD, which I'm currently diagnosed with, or is there another condition that I might have? And trying to remain so strong, I know it's good if I'm alone, I got it. So as I said, my name is Deanna and I make videos on mental health, and I myself have been diagnosed and I'm still diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I am making steps to kind of be assessed for other conditions, and I have actually now got borderline personality disorder as a secondary diagnosis, and my first diagnosis being complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I feel that the CPTSD, what I just said, the complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I feel that does actually encompass a lot of my symptoms a lot better, but I still feel that I don't have borderline, and I still feel that there is another diagnosis out there that I have in my head and I think I have, and yeah, I just feel that borderline was misdiagnosed, and I'm going to talk about why I feel it was misdiagnosed, and maybe this video might help you if you're suffering and you're suffering from the stigma for borderline personality disorder. If you're like me and you've never agreed with your diagnosis, if you think you might have another diagnosis, this might even spark you to do some research on other diagnoses. So before I get started, I just want to say that this is about me. I am going to be talking about what I think I have in this video, and I'm going to be talking about some of the criteria for both these conditions, and also talking about how I was diagnosed, when I was diagnosed, why I feel it was incorrect, so all those different things, and more about my story in general, and just, yeah, about all the things. So I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when I was 18 years old. I was diagnosed with that less than 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. And this would have been potentially okay if I'd had an extensive child and adolescent sort of record. But I didn't. I had less than 6 months worth of my child and adolescent record. I was not known to mental health services until I was about 17 and a half. And yeah, I didn't have an extensive record with them. So that is the first point that I'm going to make about how can you know me that well if I've been known to services for less than 6 months? But anyway, let's get on and have a look at the BPD criteria. So I pulled up the criteria on my phone because I don't even know the full criteria. So on the NHS website, it says a diagnosis can usually be made if you answer yes to 5 or more of the following questions. I'm going to answer this based on then and now. So I'll put a thing up on the side that will have the criteria, and then also how I would have said yes or no then compared to now. So the first criteria that the NHS website states is, do you have an intense fear of being left alone, which causes you to act in ways that on reflection seem out of the ordinary or extreme, such as constantly phoning somebody but not including self-harming or suicidal behaviour? So yes, I would have said yes when I was 17/18, but now, no. I've definitely do not do it now. I think a lot of my behaviour when I was 17 or 18 was down to anxiety and just general, the trauma relating to the memories of people abandoning me. And so I think that was answering yes because of that. I don't think it was out of a fear of, I don't know, I wouldn't constantly phone somebody. I would text people and maybe over text people, but I definitely wouldn't do that now. With my best friend, for example, Alex, she's one of my best friends, and with her, we don't talk all day, every day. And sometimes I worry about her, so sometimes, yes, I'll call her. But we talk because we're friends, and we talk because we're happy to talk to each other. So in terms of a fear of being left alone, no. I currently live alone, so I would definitely say no to that question now. So I'm going to put a no in the box for now, and a yes for previously in my life, simply because I did do it on occasion when I felt like someone hadn't messaged me for a while and they didn't want to talk to me again and things like that. Whereas now I can kind of say, well, they're probably busy. I'll send them a text to let them know I'm thinking about them, but I'm not going to message them over and over again, because at the end of the day, I can control how I behave, but I can't control how they behave. So if they don't want to talk to me, that's completely up to them. Whereas for me, I can control how I behave by letting them know how I feel and letting them know that I miss them, but I can't control whether they reply or not. So I've definitely, kind of got a grasp and a knowledge of that now. The second criteria that it states is, do you have a pattern of intense and unstable relationships with other people that switch between thinking that you love that person and that they're wonderful to hating that person and thinking they're terrible? When I was 17 or 18, I would say occasionally. I'm going to give it a yes because I think they would have marked me as yes when I was 17 or 18. Now, I don't switch necessarily. So I always use the term, you've got to really do something really horrible to annoy me, and you've got to really do something really horrible for me to hate you. So this criteria, I think, yes, I don't have an intense and unstable relationship. Sometimes I can, I have this habit of piling all of my problems and all my past history on somebody that's fairly new to me, because I don't want them to just leave when I've got to know them and I've built that relationship with them. And I'm learning to kind of not do that anymore, because I feel that sometimes, yes, I am pushing them away by telling them everything that's happened to me and not building that relationship slowly. I would say that yes, I have a tendency to impulsively jump into things, but that's a later criteria. This one is just talking about intense and unstable relationships. I would say when I was 17 or 18, as I just said, yes, I probably did get a mark for it, but now I have had the same group of friends and I haven't lost any friends for a good couple of years. There was one friend that I lost, and that was a mutual disagreement that we don't talk anymore. But that was something that was both sides of the thing. It wasn't just me, if that makes sense. So it wouldn't really go under a pattern because it was a mutual and it was also only the one. So the next criteria is, do you ever feel that you do not have a strong sense of your own self and are unclear about your self-image? No. When I was younger, maybe. So I probably would have got a yes for that one too, when I was 17 or 18. Now I know exactly who I am. I know that my name is Deeanna. I'm 27. The basics, obviously, you're going to know that anyway, but I know who I am. I know that I am a strong, capable individual that has gone through a lot in my life, but is making steps to improve my life. For example, trying to become a YouTuber, trying to, make a living out of talking about my story, trying to help others because I felt like I wasn't helped when I was younger, trying to make a difference in the mental health community. I know exactly who I want to become, and I know exactly what I am today, and I'm showing up like that person who I'm going to be hopefully in 6 months to a year's time. But it is hard sometimes, and I do get it. I do get that, everyone is going to have an unclear about their self-image, especially if they're feeling particularly, triggered by something. And you can get triggered even if you don't have borderline personality disorder. You can have an argument with a friend and then that can spiral, and anyone can have that. Anyone can feel upset about it. So the actual criteria where it says, do you ever feel? That's very unclear, because everyone would surely tick that box. Because you probably, even if you don't meet the criteria diagnosis for borderline personality disorder, probably at least one point in your life, you've had an unclear self-image. But I would say over the past couple of years, no. Literally, I'm 3 years into my mental health recovery. Since I have been well and since I've been stable, I have known exactly who I am. So I'm going to say no. So the next criteria is, do you engage in impulsive activities in 2 areas that are potentially damaging, such as unsafe sex, drug misuse, or reckless spending, but not including self-harming or suicidal behaviour? So I never ticked that box. Even when I was 17, I had sometimes reckless spending, but it says 2 areas. I would never do the unsafe sex, and I never used drugs. So those 2 things, I was no for both then and now. The next criteria is, have you made repeated suicide threats or attempt in your past and engaged in self-harming? So yes, that would have been a massive tick for when I was 17 or 18. The criteria here does say, have you made repeated attempts in your past and engaged in self-harming? I suppose probably that would be a yes still, even though I haven't done anything for 3 years. Probably they would still say that's a yes, because the actual thing says in your past. So in my past, yes, I have. So it would be a tick for now and for then. The next criteria is, do you have severe mood swings, such as feeling intensely depressed, anxious or irritable, which last from a few hours to a few days? When I was 17 or 18, I had intense mood swings. Mood swings that would go from feeling elated and jumping around the room and having a massive a massive playfulness and all those bits and pieces to feeling really depressed and shaking and crying and having a panic attack on the floor? Yes, I did. But I do feel that potentially that wasn't related to my borderline personality disorder. I felt triggered by a lot of things. My trauma made me triggered by a lot of things. And yes, what I had when I was 17 or 18 might have come across and might have been seen as having borderline personality disorder. But I just think it was being triggered every day and multiple times a day, because I would walk past somebody and they would snigger at me, or I would walk past somebody and they would scoff at me and things like that, and that would trigger me, and then I'd have a panic attack. And because I'm not telling people that that's happened, it's then seeming like I'm having those mood swings. I mean, I probably did also have mood swings, but what 17 or 18-year-old doesn't? Like, your hormones are going crazy, you're gonna have mood swings. The next criteria is, do you have long-term feelings of emptiness and loneliness? When I was 17 or 18, yes, I felt like I wasn't listened to. I also felt like I didn't have a great bond with people that were in my life at the time, and yes, I did feel quite empty. I didn't have my best friend, who is my best friend now, Alex. She's amazing. I didn't have her in my life when I was 17 or 18. And I didn't have that one person. And I consciously, and I knew that I craved having a really good friend. Even now, I will tell her, I'll be like, I craved having a friendship like what we have now. And I can't help but feel scared to lose her. Like, I know I'm not going to lose her. My conscious mind and my rational mind knows I'm not going to lose Alex as a friend. But when I'm feeling even slightly triggered, or we've had a slight disagreement, I then go to, well, I'm going to lose you. And I've had discussions with her about this, and it is possibly considered one of the criteria for borderline personality disorder. But also, I've been dumped by a heck of a lot of people who have told me that they're my friend. So that could also be seen as a trauma response, maybe. The next criteria is, do you have a sudden and intense feeling of anger and aggression and often find it difficult to control your anger? It was no for both of the times. So when I was 17 or 18 and now, I am a very calm person. It takes a lot to annoy me. It takes a lot to piss me off, basically. And I don't usually get angry. I might get irritable, but I don't get angry. So the last criteria on this list is, when you find yourself in stressful situations, do you have feelings of paranoia, or do you feel disconnected from the world or your own body, thoughts and behaviour? I'm not sure how I answered it when I was 17 or 18. I'm not sure at all. Like, I probably had panic attacks that maybe might have been considered as feeling disconnected. So I'm going to say yes when I was 17 or 18. Now, no. I don't even know what it really means by that criteria, but I don't think it applies now. So I will go by that, and I think I probably scored about sort of 6 or 7 on the 17/18 like criteria thing, and I probably only scored like 2 now. So now I would not meet the criteria for borderline personality disorder, but then I would have met it. But the thing is, with borderline personality disorder, it is a problem with your personality in a way. That's why it's called borderline personality disorder. It's not something that you can help. It's usually caused by unhealed trauma, so therefore you can't control what's happening to you. I would say that a lot of the symptoms, and this is where I'm going to get into what diagnosis I think I have that is not borderline personality disorder. So the diagnosis that I think I may have is autism, and I have mentioned it briefly in a couple of videos, I think, but autism in girls and borderline personality disorder is common misdiagnosed. So it is a very common thing to be misdiagnosed as having borderline personality disorder when in fact you do have autism. I'm going to briefly talk about autism and some of the symptoms that I do experience. So I struggle with eye contact. I am very good sometimes at masking, and I'm very good at making eye contact with the lens of the camera, and it may look like I'm really, really good at eye contact, but in social situations I'm rubbish at eye contact. I hate it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. It is definitely not something that I enjoy, and I'm usually listening to what the person's saying, taking in what the person's saying, but not looking at them because it makes me feel uncomfortable. I have anxiety a lot. but not as much as I did when I was younger. So I get anxiety in, I suppose, smaller ways. So the eye contact thing is one thing I do. When I'm not masking, I tend to stim, and my stimming might be anything from taking my hand and like doing that with my fingers, like when I'm anxious, and I won't necessarily do it up like I'm doing it now. I'll have it down sort of at the side of me, and I'll be like doing that with my fingers, because doing that motion and sort of moving my fingers like this gives me something else to concentrate on other than my anxiety. And having that, I do that a lot when I'm in doctor's waiting rooms, when I'm in a queue to pay for something if I've got a free hand, or if I'm in a busy shop, or the tubes. The tube is a big trigger for me. I hate being in the enclosed environment, and the claustrophobia gives me anxiety, and also the amount of people. Like, I just don't do well in crowds of people, but you know, I have ways of dealing with it, and I feel that a lot of my symptoms for autism are very, very highly masked, and that's why I probably got diagnosed with the borderline personality disorder, because I was coming across as that. I don't know, it's very hard, and obviously I'm only skimming the surface with autism, because autism is a very, very complex condition, and I'm not going to talk much more about it because I'm not fully clued up on it. I'm still doing research each and every day, but I'm currently on the waiting list for an autism assessment. I have been since January 2020, and that makes over 3 years on the waiting list, and I've been told that I probably will be waiting until the end of this year, early next year, for my assessment. And so yeah, I know I'm on the waiting list. I think what I think about my diagnosis. I do think I have autism, but whether I do or whether I don't will be decided whenever I have my assessment. So I'm now going to move on to some of the little mini story times that have kind of made me think that I don't have borderline personality disorder and I actually do have autism. So I've never agreed with borderline personality disorder. Never ever have I agreed with having borderline personality disorder. Like, even when it was diagnosed, it didn't sit right with me. It didn't feel right. It didn't make me feel like I was listened to. It didn't make me feel like, you know, this was the diagnosis that was for me. It didn't give me that whole, like, it didn't give me that euphoria of finally finding an answer for how I was feeling. It just didn't. It didn't give me that eureka moment. And that is one of the things that I definitely will be bringing to my autism assessment, is I've never agreed with borderline personality disorder. The second thing is, when I was 20 or 21, something around that age, I was in a respite sort of crisis home. It's not quite a hospital, it's a house where they treat like people that are in crisis, and I'd met this doctor once. He was from the crisis team, and he was coming to assess me, to make changes to any medication, and he was, you know, just coming to see me in general. In this crisis home, usually a doctor from the crisis team will come and see you once a week, or kind of once in that admission, definitely, and it's usually towards the beginning, and they will make any changes to medication, they will assess you, they will do whatever. And during this assessment, he must have spent about an hour with me, and at this point, he said to me, "Has anyone ever said to you that you might be autistic?" And I said to him, "Autism?" And he goes, "Yeah, autism." And I said, "Why do you think I've got autism?" And he said, "Well, you're not making eye contact, for one. That's the biggest thing." And he began then to list off a load of symptoms that made him think like I might have autism. And it suddenly started to make sense. Almost like I was being given quarter of the puzzle that I needed to finally feel like I had that eureka moment. And planting that seed in me thinking that I might be autistic. So he's the one who planted that seed. Then when I was 21, I was being sectioned. I had been sectioned, and I was going off, and I was waiting for a bed. I was in the general hospital waiting for a bed in the psychiatric ward. And one of the HCAs, who is a healthcare assistant, he had seen I was distressed, and there was lots of changes that were happening within my treatment. And each one of those changes was making me feel distressed. I was having a panic attack. I was crying. I was really not very well. And he basically sat down with me. He calmed me down, and then he said to me, "Has anyone ever said to you that you might be autistic?" And that is the second time that someone said to me that I might be autistic. So that was like another quarter of the puzzle. And then, because there was two completely independent people that had not spoken to each other, who, you know, were a good 6 months to a year apart, had suddenly gone, "Do you think you might be autistic?" And it kind of made me feel like, well, that's two people now. Maybe I should do some research on this. this. So I sat down, and between the time of me being 21 and then being sort of 23, 24 when I actually requested to have a autism assessment, I had done loads of research, I had looked into autism, and I had really kind of, I don't know, felt very like, almost like starting to have that eureka moment. Looking at the criteria for autism, seeing how it affects people, seeing like how it is highly misdiagnosed, like how a lot of people are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when they actually have autism, and that is mainly happening in girls, and me finally feeling like this is a diagnosis that is me. So I'm making this video in April of 2023. I have been on the waiting list since January of 2020, I believe, and so I will keep you updated. I will probably make another video when I get my appointment letter, and then I'll probably make a video documenting the whole process of the actual assessment. But yeah, I can't wait to get an answer finally as to whether I'm autistic or not, and then if I am, to receive the support that I need and that I really do need in my life. So whether I do or whether I don't have autism, I still would love to have an answer, so I will keep you updated. But that is it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry that I've rambled, and I'm sorry that I've caused this video to be probably very, very long. I can't quite see the number on the amount of time on this video, but I think it just says 30 minutes of unedited footage. So I'm going to need help to edit this because it's going to take me forever, but hopefully this has given you some insight into who I am, what I'm currently struggling with, and also like maybe helped you in a way to plant a seed. Like I was planted a seed by that doctor back when I was like 20 years old, where he kind of said to me, has it ever been suggested to you that you might be autistic? And maybe I've planted a seed for somebody else with borderline personality disorder. But as I said, that is it for today's video. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. But before I go, please don't forget that I believe in you, even if nobody else does. And to see you in my next one. Bye.
Just like you're young again, no, don't you cry. Just get back up again.